What if mass migration wasn't just about people looking for a better life? What if it was actually being used as a political weapon? Well, that's the really provocative idea at the center of Peter Schweizer's book, The Invisible Coup. So, in this explainer, we're going to unpack his theory of weaponized migration using the arguments laid out in his work. All right, so let's start with the central question this book really wants us all to think about. Most of the time when we talk about migration, the conversation is about economics or humanitarian issues. But this source argues that we might be missing the real story here, that maybe we should be looking at modern migration through a whole different lens, the lens of a strategic political conflict. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to define exactly what the book means by this term weaponized migration. Then we'll look at the two big case studies it focuses on, Mexico and China, and the very different tactics it claims they're using. And finally, we'll see how the author ties all of this directly to the political landscape right here in the US. Okay, so first things first, what is weaponized migration? The entire argument of the book really hangs on this definition. It's presented as a totally new way to think about this, something that makes what's happening today fundamentally different from past waves of migration. So according to the book, this isn't just about individuals or families making a choice to come here on their own. The claim is that this is a deliberate, organized strategy. The argument is that some foreign governments aren't just letting migration happen, they are actively directing it. And the goal? To build political networks inside the United States that can work against American interests from the inside out. So how does this theory actually look in the real world? Well, the book's first big case study takes a deep dive into Mexico. It argues that the Mexican government has a very specific and often pretty openly stated strategic goal behind the migration we're seeing. The book points to direct quotes like this as, well, Exhibit A. The argument is, when you hear a top-level Mexican official saying something this direct, we should probably take them at their word. The goal, according to the author, isn't just about economics. It's part of a long-term plan to reclaim influence over areas they see as their historic territory. And then the book points to the infrastructure that's supposedly behind this strategy. I mean, check this out. It highlights that Mexico has 53 consulates in the US. That just dwarfs what major allies like the UK have, or even rivals like China. The author claims this network does way more than just stamp passports. It's supposedly acting like a political machine to organize activists and get involved in American politics. So when you put all these pieces together, the picture the book is painting is pretty clear. The allegation is that Mexico is trying to exert a kind of sovereignty on U.S. soil. The source claims they're organizing protests, working to influence elections, and even have their own officials living and working inside the U.S., all with this goal of turning key American states from red to blue. Now, let's shift gears to the book's next big case study, China. And here, the alleged strategy is completely different. The argument is that this isn't about some open reclamation of territory. It's way more subtle. A covert plan to exploit America's own systems against itself for a long-term strategic advantage. A huge piece of this claim revolves around something called birth tourism. The source alleges that back around 2011, China's own state-run media started to openly encourage a very specific strategy for Chinese elites to travel to the U.S., give birth here on American soil, and boom, secure U.S. citizenship for their kids. And the numbers cited in the book are pretty staggering. It points to Chinese research firms that estimate this is happening to the tune of 100,000 births every single year. Now, the long-term concern, according to the author, isn't just the number. It's the idea of creating over 1 million U.S. citizens who have no real connection to the country, who were raised by the CCP elite, and who could represent a massive vulnerability in the future. So the book argues this isn't just one thing, but a whole multi-front strategy. It goes beyond birth tourism and points to PLA-affiliated pilots training in U.S. flight schools, a really suspicious number of military-aged men crossing the southern border, and a deep alleged connection between the Chinese government and organized crime networks operating inside America. Okay, so how do all these alleged foreign strategies connect back to politics here at home? This is where the book makes its most explosive claim, that this isn't really a foreign policy issue at all. It's a domestic political strategy, and one with very clear winners. The book introduces this term voter mills, a phrase it says actually came from a White House email. The allegation is that certain administrations have intentionally made citizenship rules looser, things like civics tests and background checks, for one very simple reason: to create new voters who are very likely to vote one way as fast as they possibly can. According to the source, this strategy has two huge effects on the U.S. political map. First, you've got the census. Since it counts every person, not just citizens, it means states like California allegedly get up to 7 extra congressional seats and, of course, extra electoral votes. And second, the book cites research claiming that 85% of new migrants tend to initially vote for the Democratic Party, which creates a really significant and pretty immediate shift in elections. And all of this brings us back to the fundamental question the book forces us to confront. By framing migration not as a humanitarian issue, but as a political weapon, the source really makes us ask, where is that line? At what point does a country's immigration policy stop being about people and start being about power? That's the real challenge at the very heart of the Invisible Coup.